Hello, welcome to Community Focus. I'm Stevens Point Mayor Gary Wescott, and thank you for joining us again today on Community Focus. So much information to share with the people of Stevens Point, so much news to pass along. I'll go as fast as I can, but I have an awful lot that I really wish to discuss with you, the people of our wonderful community, today on Community Focus. Thank you for being here with us. In recent days, you may have been hearing more, reading more about a proposal from the state of Wisconsin that would transfer all of the responsibilities of a city assessor, a village assessor, for example, in the village of Plover. All assessing would be transferred to the county. And you're hearing more and more about what a surprise it was. I don't think too many people in cities across the entire state of Wisconsin, villages, had any idea as to why that is so important and where in the world did that come from. Now, let me tell you why it's something we really need to slow down and think about, do some planning about. Don't know that it's necessarily the worst idea, but because it's one of those ideas that has basically been sprung on cities throughout the entire state, villages and townships, with an implementation date of 2017, there really isn't an awful lot of time if we're going to make that transition from city assessors, village assessors, to a county-wide level of assessment. Now, let me tell you why there are probably some initial concerns with it, and I think my friend Dan Mahoney, Village of Plover Administrator, summarized some of them very well in a recent news article. The property assessment process, city assessors, village assessors, requires a very high level of training, skill, and education. The certifications that go with this state license are vast, and it requires individuals with tremendous experience, educational background, and currently this county that I'm aware of has no experienced employees at that level. There's no one at the county level that would have the level of experience, the training, the knowledge, educational background to be an assessor. The assessors here in Stevens Point over the years that I have known, and I have known a couple of them, the assessors in the village of Plover, surrounding areas, basically are doing an outstanding job. They are doing an excellent work and a very, very difficult piece of governing here in the state of Wisconsin. And again, I think what most city mayors, village administrators, town chairs are questioning is implementing a complete change this big from city assessing to county by the year 2017 simply is not realistic. Again, the county has no employees, no training, no software, and that's another issue that I know many people are talking about. The state of Wisconsin recently, within the last year or two, required all cities to basically upgrade their software packages. These were expensive assessing software packages that the city had to buy, Plover had to buy. I think my friend Dan Mahoney makes a good point. Is the state planning to reimburse cities and villages for that expensive software that was purchased and now basically would become obsolete before it has too many years of being used? And I think it's also important to realize something that I've talked about. Everybody enters data a little bit differently, towns, cities, and villages, so to try and come up with a one-size-fits-all is going to be problematic, and it could create a very expensive problem for you, the taxpayers of not only this city, but villages and towns, as there's a requirement that's going to make it impossible for any community to not be at what's called 100% of assessed value, which means it'll be a evaluation process that is underway all the time, which could become very expensive. Which is another thing, the reason the city is looking at it is right now we're into year 2 of a citywide revaluation. That's an extremely expensive proposition, but required by state law for cities to do. Once we're under a certain level of assessment in a community, we have to, by state law, reevaluate the entire city, reassess the whole city. That process is extremely expensive. The money has been budgeted for last year, this year, and next year. And then, of course, it begs the question, well, do we stop and wait until the county takes over if that's the process? So I think there's a lot of areas here where we have to recognize the professionalism of our assessors in the cities throughout the entire state of Wisconsin and in the villages. And if at anything we need to slow down a little bit, state of Wisconsin should do some analysis as to, is this really something that is necessary? It surprised a lot of people, especially at the county level. Is it something that is going to negatively impact the homeowners in the city of Stevens Point? It could. And we need to do some study, and to say we're going to implement this by 2017 simply is not realistic. So we need to keep an eye on that. And we also need to remember, as I pointed out to a reporter recently, I don't remember the exact year. It was either the late 90s or early in 2002 or 3. There was a test pilot done in Kenosha County where all of the assessing for villages and cities and townships in Kenosha County was transferred to the county government. The pilot project failed miserably, and it wasn't too many years later it was discontinued, and all of the assessing responsibilities were transferred back to the local municipalities. So there's an awful lot of work to be done in Wisconsin, and some analysis that needs to be done to make sure this is really a good plan. We need to slow down, study it, and make sure that it makes sense for the taxpayers, and that cities are really able to follow the letter of the law when it comes to the revaluation process, and that we haven't created yet another system that's very expensive for counties to implement and where cities and villages would lose money. Let's talk a little bit, if I could. I think since we have last shared a few minutes here on Community Focus, you're aware that the Common Council of the City of Stevens Point passed a resolution going formally on record. It was a unanimous vote, which I am pleased to report, where the City Council said we are opposed to the proposed cuts to the University of Wisconsin system, and we request as a city that the full legislature fund the University of Wisconsin system as funded recommendations came from the Board of Regents, formally going on record supporting the UW Stevens Point for a variety of reasons we discussed on our last Community Focus program, well reported in area media. The UW Stevens Point is a key economic engine that's so important to the central Wisconsin economy, and the proposed cuts coming from Madison are clearly going to have a devastating impact long-term on the university, not only here in Stevens Point, but statewide. Another area that I think the city needs to take a look at as we work in partnership with the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point is this proposed change in governance that many of you are aware of, where more autonomy, quote-unquote, would be given to the universities to basically govern themselves free of the state legislature. Now, it's an interesting idea. What was also interesting is recently hundreds of professors throughout the university system went on record asking for basically that nothing be done for 2 years and that this governance model be studied. They claim, and I think on the face of it, with some study, there is no evidence to support that a change in governance is really going to improve the system. I think when you have so many professors of economics and other planning areas openly questioning if there really is going to be an improvement to our entire state of Wisconsin university system, arguing to slow down, that there is no plan for implementation if the state legislature approves this significant governance change, and it's an important matter that we need to be aware of, and I would certainly agree with them. Let's slow down. Let's do some analysis. Let's do our due diligence statewide to make sure that long-term, for the decades ahead, that this action, moving so quickly at this moment in time, doesn't really inflict more damage than it helps the university system. So it's another example of where I think the state could use a little advanced strategic planning, do a little time, and say, well, we don't know if this is really going to work when you look at some other states that have done similar things, transferring the governance of the university system back to the local schools, and it didn't work that well in a number of other states. So I think it's realistic to support those professors statewide who have said, let's stop, let's study this, let's make sure that we have a plan of action and not just an idea for altering governance. While I'm talking about the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, another major project that the city has been very supportive of for some time is recently moving through the city system again. You'll be seeing more about it as the days and weeks go by, but the university's plan to build the 176,000 square foot science building at the university has been in front of the Plan Commission and will be back in front of the City Council very soon for final approval and permission to build the brand new state-of-the-art science, biology, and chemistry center at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. It's a very interesting project that we've reported to you before here on Community Focus. We have talked in the past about the importance for sciences and the curriculum involved with sciences at the UW Stevens Point. And it's interesting, as we continue to support the UW-Stevens Point in this major endeavor to build the science building at UW-Stevens Point. They plan to break ground in October of this year, 2015, and hope to occupy the new building by the spring of 2018. So we'll keep you posted on that. Again, back before the Plan Commission and other city committees during the month of March. It's nice that March is finally arriving, and maybe the weather will start to warm up a little bit. We're hopeful anyway. A couple of quick reminders. Talking about comp plan planning, it's really your opportunity to participate in the future of the city of Stevens Point. Right now, the city's comprehensive planning is in the phase where we're basically asking you, the people of Stevens Point, for your comments, your thoughts. We've had information from our associate planner, Kyle Kearns, basically online saying, we'd like you to participate. We'd like to hear your thoughts. I know John Quirk, sitting behind the camera, has provided thoughts to the city that have been passed along to the planning department. We want all of you to go to our favorite website, stevenspoint.com. There's information there. On Facebook, other venues for the city, and basically share with us your thoughts as that comprehensive plan evolves basically in the next 18 months to 2 years here in the city of Stevens Point. When we talk about things that are evolving and developing, one of the areas that have always been very important to me is the level of intergovernmental communication and cooperation. Now, what do we mean by that? We mean area municipalities, Town of Hull, Village of Whiting, Village of Plover, City of Stevens Point, Park Ridge, surrounding municipalities, Linwood, Carson, working together in a cooperative nature. And recently I wrote to the chairman of the Town of Hull, who had expressed to me, John Holdridge, had written me a letter a few weeks ago, seeing if there was any interest in some formal collaboration between the City of Stevens Point and the Town of Hull when it comes to long-term comprehensive planning involving both the Town of Hull and the City of Stevens Point. I responded in the affirmative, reminding Chairman Holdridge that in the past our histories of working together is very rich. If you stop and think for a moment, sometimes things that we have done in the last 10 or 15 years that we now take for granted today were really the result of intercommunication and governmental cooperation between the various governmental agencies here in Portage County. Let me give you a couple of quick examples. My favorite one that I'll talk a little bit more about later in this program, if I get to it, time permitting, is of course the paramedic program. We implemented, working together cooperatively in 1999, a paramedic medical program that serves every municipality in Portage County, not just the City of Stevens Point, but provides the highest care and qualified medical service to every municipality. We worked together jointly when it came to a number of telecommunication issues. We have always worked together in a cooperative spirit. In 2006, when the first comprehensive plans were written not only for the City of Stevens Point, but for every town and village in Portage County, again with all of the village, town, and city leaders at the same table, working together in a cooperative spirit. Another good example might be our transit service. When I took office in 1995, yes, it was that long ago, our transit service, City Bus, served the City of Stevens Point constituents well. But we were only a city bus service at that time. Well, with time, the service expanded to expanding our routes into the Village of Whiting and into the Village of Plover with a stop in Park Ridge, servicing Crossroads Commons again with a really fine public transportation system that we simply grew by the governments surrounding Stevens Point working cooperatively in building a transit network that again serves Whiting and parts of Plover and a portion of Park Ridge. And we're currently talking with the county about a plan that might allow us to expand to cover more of the county's transportation needs beyond the boundaries of Stevens Point, Plover, and Whiting. So very early in the stages of exploring that, but there are opportunities there that our transit team, under the leadership of Susan Lemke as our transit manager and Joel Lemke, no relation by the way, I've often, when I put those two together, there's no relation, have put together a very exciting concept to basically expand our public transportation offerings to multiple communities here in Portage County, again through a strong partnership of area municipalities working together in a cooperative spirit. I'll give you another example, since I'm giving examples here, that in the early 2003, 2004, 2005 area, we partnered with surrounding municipalities, including the town of Stockton, town of Hull, village of Plover, in what was called an addition to the Stevens Point Sewer Service District. Now, most of you sitting at home going, oh, who cares about the Stevens Point Sewer Service District? Well, let me tell you why it's important, and the city had to have approval from all those surrounding municipalities to expand the sewer service district, because without land being in the city's sewer service district, annexation of that property is not possible. And without annexation, we would not have had the Portage County Business Park that we have today. Of course, it's in the city of Stevens Point. And as was reported during the Andrew Halverson administration, the development of the East Park Commerce Center began basically east of Burlesky Road. None of that could have occurred if it hadn't been earlier when we sat down during my third term and spent quite a bit of time working with surrounding municipalities to bring that acreage into the Stevens Point Sewer Service District. If the surrounding municipalities had said no, there would be no East Park Commerce Center development today. The land would not have been in our sewer service district and would not have been eligible for creation of that business park. So sometimes, I guess the lesson here is long-term cooperative planning with our neighbors can pay benefits well into the future. So there's a good reason to get along with our neighbors and to work cooperatively, as we have in the past, with surrounding municipalities. I want to talk just a little bit about the ESCI study. We've talked a lot about our paramedic study and our community-focused programs, but during the first couple of weeks of March, basically through the third week of March, the ESCI team will be here in Portage County, meeting with the key stakeholders, county, village of Plover, city of Stevens Point, other surrounding municipalities, certainly spending time with our fire chief, our assistant chief for EMS, as we work cooperatively in planning the next generation of paramedic services here in Portage County. So the process has started, and we're pleased to report that during the first 3 weeks of March, the team from ESCI will be on the ground. There will be a project kickoff meeting. Then they're going to spend considerable amount of time speaking and sharing information and gathering from the people of not only our community but surrounding communities and the professionals, our paramedics, what type of services should we be involved with in the next 10 years. And again, it's a good opportunity, as we have talked about on Community Focus before, just pause and take a look at the strategic plan that was created in 2005, 2006, and say, okay, of the goals and objectives that were created for emergency medicine, how many of them have we met or exceeded, and in what areas do we need to continue to focus and grow and improve this system. So we're pleased to report to the community that the ESCI study is underway as you're viewing this program here on Community Focus. We're reviewing the master plan, and we're going to give some recommendations as to how we can continue to create strong definitions of quality service throughout the county. And more importantly, what impacts will the Affordable Care Act continue to have on Portage County EMS? A lot of ground to cover there with ESCI in the time ahead. I want to talk briefly about a story that appeared in the Portage County Gazette. Many of you who read that paper have seen it, where the town of Grant is suing Portage County for 2014 EMS taxes. Now, that's an important story to follow for a variety of reasons, but a long story short, because I'd fill the rest of Community Focus explaining the legalities of this. The reason that's an important story to watch is Portage County is able to, by law, levy a special EMS tax or levy in its budget for emergency medical services because all municipalities in the county are participating in one service, one paramedic service. If the law were to allow one township to be exempt from this service, basically opt out, then I don't believe, I'm not a lawyer, but I know some people think I play one sometimes. I'm not a lawyer, but as I understand this, if one municipality were to be allowed to exit the system, the county would no longer be able to levy a special emergency medical service tax, and we would simply have to find other ways to pay for an extremely important service that clearly is a benefit to the people of Portage County. Well, let me roll quickly on a few other items. We're talking about paramedic services. A quick tip of the cap to our Assistant Fire Chief Joe Gemza and Fire Chief Bob Finn. They worked very hard, cooperatively with Portage County officials to secure heart monitors, a critical piece of equipment on our ambulances that were about outdated. They both worked very hard to upgrade those systems and to basically secure money that was needed to get those valuable pieces of equipment on the ambulances and to take care of that. We also want to talk a little bit about, as we have shared on this program before, the safety improvements in the Division Street area by the fire station and Franklin Street. Have you noticed the improvements? I'll bet by now, if you drive through there, especially at night, you will have noticed some things have changed in that corridor. A lot of the excess signage is gone. A lot of the flashing lights have disappeared. We have also, and are grateful to Wisconsin Public Service, the brighter bulbs. As we were kidding down here, they replaced the 60-watt bulbs in the street lights with a 100-watt bulb. That, of course, is not the case. But they have plugged in brighter bulbs in that corridor to make it brighter in the community. So it's important that we do everything possible to save this community and to realize that we needed to take important steps. So a lot of the excess signage has been removed. You will have noticed the electronic sign in front of the fire headquarters, which the police and other safety officials felt very strongly about being a safety hazard, is that moving light was such a distraction to motorists proceeding north and south on Division Street. That has been turned off by direction of the City Council. And we're currently looking for a new home for that directional sign, or for that signage that sits in front of the fire station. So if you have a spot, we have a couple of ideas under consideration, but if you think there's a good place that you can think of in the community for that message board, we would love very much to hear your idea on that. Well, by now, I think most of you know that we're heading toward the April election. And again, I commend the candidates running for alderperson and for mayor. And of course, the two surviving candidates for the mayoral race are both alderpersons, so they attend all of the city committees automatically. But we have a number of key races in the aldermanic races. So I again invite any alderperson or candidate running for alderperson to spend some time with the City Hall officials, learn and get to know your directors down here. You want to spend a little time in the mayor's office talking about issues that are important to you in your ward. Give us a call or email us. We're happy to put together some time to spend with you, because it won't be too many more weeks, and there's a very strong possibility that many of you who are not in elected office today are going to be in a very important position in the city of Stevens Point on that Common Council making decisions. So it's important that you get up to speed as fast as you possibly can and realize how important a job it is that you are pursuing in the city of Stevens Point. Very shortly, the Stevens Point Police Department will be unveiling its annual report for 2014 to the Police and Fire Commission. And then later this month, in March, the annual police report will be presented to a full meeting of the Common Council. It's important that annually, both with police and fire, last month we did some reporting on work that's going on at the Water and Sewer Department. In fact, you can see parts of that on our Facebook and city webpage. John Quirk has broken that down into multiple parts. There's a lot of important information there, but I'm a strong believer that these annual reports are really important components in a governance of a city. Not only do the alderpersons, but the people we serve get a very clear idea of the work and the volume of work that is taking place. Well, in this example I'm using, of course, is in our police department, where you have so much going on, and you're going to see dramatic growth in basically the cyber crimes unit, where cyber crimes, computer crimes, as we have a special unit dedicated to investigating cyber crimes. The issue of drug abuse continues to be a major component that we are going to ask our police officials to report on during the month of March. So stay tuned. I'm sure there'll be reports not only here, but on stevenspoint.com, local media, concerning that annual report. While we're talking about annual reports, as we film this program, one of the other areas that we have been working on now for several months, and I don't have as much time to get into it today as I want. We'll do it in the next community focus. But certainly computers are such an important part of what we do every day. in our role here as employees for you, the City of Stevens Point, people of Stevens Point. We don't have a master IT plan for the City of Stevens Point. We really need to, and have been working for several months now, to write that master IT plan as far as what we do electronically, the offerings that we have, and I think many of you are aware of a lot of the hard work that's being done with our website, Facebook, other social media offering, and to take a look at all of our IT plans for the city as far as equipment, modernization of the equipment, proper internet security. It is a considerable undertaking, but as we chat, certainly one of the most important things that we do involves the use of computers and their role basically in how we integrate that all into one area. Also, in the days and weeks ahead, just to touch quickly, it's a county project. I'm sure the county executive, Patty Dreyer, will be talking more about it on her show in the near future. But just to give a heads up to our community, in the weeks ahead, you're likely to start hearing more in the local media about the Justice Center, proposed Justice Center, and as that's being proposed for the Portage County government. Now, the Portage County government is planning in the weeks ahead to do more to talk about it publicly, unveil their plans publicly. So watch for information not only here on CA3, but the Portage County website, local media concerning the construction of the Justice Center here in the, I believe right now in the downtown area for the City of Stevens Point. Again, as we touch on a couple of other items, we're quickly reviewing the Portage County bicycle and pedestrian plan that was approved in 2014 with considerable impacts on the City of Stevens Point. It was interesting to note in the current bicycle and pedestrian plan as penned by the Portage County Planning and Zoning Office. They did a good job with it, but it's interesting they do a lot of comparison work to the bicycle and pedestrian plan that was created with the Village of Plover and the City of Stevens Point, another area of governments cooperating in 1997. And they talk about how much of what was cited in the 97 plan actually has been implemented. Yes, there's a lot of room to improve and continue to implement parts of that 1997 plan. But it was extremely gratifying to see that so much of the work that had been identified with the village and the city working together in the late 90s had really been accomplished here by 2015, so that was good to see. As always, we are always working on a number of highway projects. I've been reported and available also on our website. The I-39, Wisconsin 66, Stanley Street interchange, well reported on a project that will be taking place in 2017. If you haven't had the opportunity, please take the time and familiarize yourself. That is a major rebuild of that interchange on Stanley Street and I-39 that's going to take place in just a couple of years with the addition of roundabouts. It's a significant construction change that I want to make sure that people of Stevens Point are clearly aware of as we move forward into the future. A quick reminder that everything we talk about here and a lot more is available at stevenspoint.com, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. We seem to have an ability to communicate that information to you. Well, I have an awful lot that I didn't get to today. I don't think John or I are terribly surprised by that. So we'll reserve all of that for our next program here on Community Focus. As always, if you have any questions about anything you have heard here today on Community Focus, please feel free to email me here in the mayor's office. Give us a call. We love to hear from you. If you have ideas for things you'd like me to cover, love to hear that too. As always, thank you for spending some time here today with us on Community Focus. We'll see you soon.